Hello and welcome to TSK F1. My name's Rich and this is your daily dose of Formula One news. Today we're going to be talking about Williams and their appointment of a new COO. Also, Alonso talking about this is only the beginning of the journey for Aston Martin, and more Red Bull news. Helmut Marko talking about the cost cap and wind tunnel penalties and what effect that may have on the team. Before we go any further, please do smash a like on the stream and also subscribe down below, making sure to hit that bell button so you get notified whenever TSK F1 goes live. Just a little reminder as well that this weekend we will be live for all of the watch-alongs, so all free practice sessions, qualifying and the race. I'll be right here with the watch-along, with all the live timing and all that good stuff. So do make sure you've pressed that bell button, guys. Okay, so let's get into the first story. I apologise for being late as well, guys. Computer was just all kinds of issues this morning. Can we just confirm that the mic is working? Because we've had all kinds of issues this morning. But anyway, first story of the day. So this is Frederick Brosio. I'm not sure of the chap's name or the pronunciation, but he has been appointed by Williams Racing as a new chief operating officer. And this, while some people might not be bothered, this is actually an important story because with new management, etc., over at Williams, they're also missing, if memory serves, other key personnel as well. Someone in chat was actually saying about this, that when... Oh, what's the chap's name that's gone to Williams? I've forgotten his name. My mind's gone blank. But he went from Mercedes to take over at Williams, but they were missing multiple key staff high up within the organisation. So this shows that they are working on these things and that they're going to be moving forward. And just as a little background, I found a little background on him, and he began his career with Pratt & Whitney in 1997 on the factory floor. It just shows you, doesn't it? The chap started on the factory floor back in 97 and now has moved all the way up to being chief operating officer of a Formula One team. It just shows you how careers go, doesn't it? He's come from aerospace, and he's come from stuff working on the Airbus A220. He was vice president of operations at Pratt & Whitney. James Vowles, that's it. My bad. Yeah, my brain went totally blank. So he's very, very sort of experienced within aerospace, and there's massive crossover between aerospace and Formula One. All of the factories have lots of people from aerospace. In his old role, he oversaw the company's worldwide operations encompassing 12 sites across Canada, Poland, Morocco, and China. He led the company's worldwide supply chain, sourcing strategy, and new program industrialization. So the guy is massively experienced, and you would have to say must be very, very good at his job. To be at Pratt & Whitney with that kind of responsibility. This looks like it could potentially be a really good hire from outside of Formula One, yes, but a really good hire for Williams. Matthew Savage, chairman of the board for Williams Racing, said, "We're very excited to bring Frederick on board as an energetic and experienced leader who can help the transformation of Williams Racing. He began his career working on the shop floor, and his most recent role saw him looking after worldwide aerospace operations, including running multiple worldwide manufacturing sites and an operation with more than 10,000 employees. I expect him to contribute significantly to our journey at Williams Racing." And Frederick himself said, "There's no better feeling than setting out on a brand new journey and working towards achieving your dreams. It's been an exciting beginning of the season. I'm looking forward to joining a team with such Formula One heritage. I'm eager to get started and contribute to building the organization's future alongside everyone at Williams Racing." Now, again, that might strike people as a bit of a boring news story. Williams get a chief operating officer, but I think more and more people who really are bothered about Formula One should be looking at the hires that teams make, because look at Aston Martin. People can say what they want, but a lot of what's happening right now is that they have recruited intelligently across many, many roles, trying to get best in class for what they need, right? And to me, this is an example of Williams really sort of, well, they've gone outside of Formula One. It's not a name we know, but obviously highly experienced individual who's used to pressure, who's used to responsibility on a global scale. This could be a really, really, really good hire, I think, for Williams, and a good step in the right direction, I think. I mean, I don't know the guy, but his resume is very strong, isn't it? You know, managing worldwide supply chains and things. So it could be good for Williams, and hopefully, I think everyone's on the same boat where we want Williams to do well. Second, we have a bit about Alonso. Now, some of these quotes I've already covered. I hope it goes well at the dentist, John. Some of these quotes I've already covered. I do just want to say really quickly actually, because it's not something I've not said on stream live, that if you have YouTube Music, this morning show is automatically made into a podcast. So if you've got YouTube Music, I think you can subscribe to this as a podcast on YouTube Music so that you can listen wherever. I think you have to have YouTube Premium, but you don't just have to watch the video. You can subscribe to it, and then every morning after I'm finished, it's automatically made into a daily podcast as well. So like John's listening on the way to the dentist, I do that, to be fair. I put my phone to the side in the car, I'm listening to a YouTube video. You can also do that with this, and you can just play it through YouTube Music. So I just thought that might be of interest to some of you, that you might have YouTube Music and want to subscribe to it as a podcast, as a daily thing. There you go. Aston Martin principal Mike said will be 4th, 5th, or even 6th fastest in Jeddah. What do you think? I mean, that's a pretty wide range. We'll come back to that maybe, though. So Alonso speaking on the car, he said we have to wait and see for Jeddah and Australia because they're very different tracks compared to Bahrain. But on the other hand, I think the car we have now is just a very basic car that we launched, and we start with a completely new concept. I think there's a lot more to come from in terms of development with this project, and I'm optimistic about that. And this ties in exactly with what they've been saying at Aston Martin since the beginning of the season, since the launch, that 75% of this car is going to change, and that this car was developed so that it can be a really good base, so that they've got further ideas already, and that this car, like, how can I put this? I think actually a comparison to Mercedes is good here. So something is fundamentally wrong with the Mercedes, right? A new floor might fix that. I don't know. It's the most important bit on these cars, pretty much. But the Mercedes, something is fundamentally wrong, okay? And there's lots of talk about them changing their concept and changing things up and so on and so forth. And the Aston Martin approach has been, let's get the concept correct. What direction we want to go in. Let's try and nail that, but make it also upgradable from a development standpoint, so that so long as we have a strong base and concept, we can really work with it and move forward developing it. Not in an easy way, but Si, you've asked me that so many times, and I told you yesterday twice as well, mate. And they really want to upgrade it. And as Mike Crack says, last year they managed to get better over the season, but we also saw how hard that is because of the intensity that you have with the racing and the cost cap. You're really tight. You need to start with a good baseline because you cannot afford to spend what you have available just on developing. That's also why we went aggressive in the targets that we had for the car. Obviously, it's not easy to achieve, but our team has managed great things there. It's much, much easier to develop from this base than to develop from the base that they had last year. We have our development plan in place, but the others have a plan in place as well. It could well be that if you develop at the same rate and you stay where you are. So let's see where we go. And that's it, really. It's a really sort of strong position for Aston Martin to be in because they have, like I said, their sort of developmental base where they're at that's already quick, which is a good thing. In a season where Red Bull are going to be hindered, which we're going to talk about shortly, it's a really good place for Aston Martin to be when you've got Ferrari seemingly struggling somewhat and Mercedes struggling as well. So yes, Si, yes, they are. I mean, I mentioned it 3 times yesterday morning when you were in, and I've just said it now when you've just asked me again. But yes, apparently Mercedes are bringing a new floor to Jeddah, and that's the last time I'll say it, just for clarity, because that's like the 6th time. And Aston Martin, I think we could see them move forward because that team and that base have always done well, haven't they? They've always done well with limited resource. When they were Racing Point, when they were Force India, they've always had a smaller manpower, if you like, and it's just a super interesting thing that in a season where others are faltering, maybe later in the season, Aston Martin might put on a bit of a charge. Do we think that's possible? I do, especially given what we're about to talk about. Now, Helmut Marko. I'm going to bring you his quotes as well, because he's sort of speaking about stuff that we've already covered-ish on the channel. But he says that as of now, they have to say that they've eliminated a few weaknesses that they had, while Ferrari is still struggling immensely with high tyre wear, which we all know. They're really struggling with high tyre wear. And this was him speaking to the German broadcaster NTV. And he said, what we lost with wind tunnel, we gained in motivation, which seems to be a bit of a Red Bull line at the minute, because it's exactly what Christian Horner said, like word for word. That's exactly what he said. So they've clearly had a bit of a meeting about this. But he said as well, we managed to prepare in an optimal way for the season. When we knew that the sanction was to be imposed, it became clear that the wind tunnel had to be used in an efficient way. For the moment, we have succeeded. But of course, as the season progresses and we run out of time in the wind tunnel, the others will still have time available and our lead will vanish. That's why it's so important that we take points now. And when asked about Mercedes, Toto Wolff and George Russell saying that Red Bull would win every race of the season, he said these words from Russell can perhaps be explained by frustration of Bahrain. It was a race on a specific circuit where the asphalt is very abrasive, which means that the tyre wear plays a very important role. Yes, it is true we had very good performance, but enough to win all the races, that we already have the title. Of course, if it were that easy, it would be fantastic, he says. And this is the thing, isn't it? As we move forward in this season, I think a lot of people, including me, are thinking and kind of hoping that we see a Red Bull that's affected by this wind tunnel stuff. And tying in with the last news story of Aston Martin, you know, where did Aston Martin come in the last 2022 constructors? Just to refresh my memory. Aston Martin have got so much time. They came 7th. So they'll have, I would imagine, with them coming 7th, I would say they have more than double wind tunnel time that Red Bull do. I haven't looked, and I'd have to really look at the stuff again to see. But I would think Aston Martin have got about double the wind tunnel time that Red Bull have. And when you couple that with a resurgence in the team, high motivation, lots of them thinking we can do this, a Fernando Alonso driving them, literally and figuratively, you could see Aston Martin through the halfway point and beyond of this season really just try and take advantage of where they're at. In the same way that people postured at the end of last season that Mercedes might drop down to... that they might prefer to be third in the constructors for the wind tunnel time, Aston Martin will have all of those extra hours and things to play with to really, really, really push. And obviously, you've got the cost cap, but there'll be certain ways you can be creative with it, in so much as keeping that development moving as much as they need to. And I hope so. It would be fantastic, I think, if we really saw that towards the end of this season into next season, the cost cap punishment, the wind tunnel punishment really played a hand. Now, this isn't anti-Red Bull. This is a thing from my perspective of the sport. I want to see it. I want to see that it change. It really have an effect. You know, and it needs to, doesn't it? Otherwise, it's a pointless thing. CFD isn't wind tunnel, dude. So, now, what could realistically happen? How much faster do a team get from the beginning to the end of the season? Now, if Ferrari actually make their race pace from the qualifying pace, then they're somewhere near Red Bull, aren't they? They're not like on them, but they are near them. And the gap that you've got between Ferrari and Red Bull, I think, could disappear. If there is an effect of the wind tunnel at the end of the season, you could see Ferrari really close that gap. So it's a tough one because no one knows until it happens. Do we think the FIA will be watching closely to see if punishments actually make a difference? Because then what is the point of handing down such punishment? Yeah, I think so, Nick. You can only... Look, I think in handing out the punishment, I think they will have, as much as people don't like it, I think the FIA will have spoken to the other teams, the Mercedes and the Ferraris and stuff like this. And while it was meant to have been sort of pre-agreed, I think they'll have had to have got buy-in in so much as going, is this harsh enough? You know, but can we save face for the sport as a whole here? You know, that we're doing a punishment, but it's not enough to kick Red Bull out of the sport. And do you know what I mean? I don't think it's as... on the face of it, it didn't seem enough to me. But then, even after watching Formula One for so long, it's really difficult to get a real terms effect of the money that was spent, right? You can get all of your Lewis Hamiltons and Toto Wolffs saying that's enough to buy that's enough to develop 2 front wings or whatever, but that's just postulating and you know, and I think that's the problem, isn't it? It's very hard to say it. Now, look, I don't care about Red Bull. If it was Mercedes, if it was Ferrari, if it's Aston Martin, I say throw the book at teams that break the rules in a significant way. And I was just taking the old punishment that we had from McLaren back in the day with the espionage, and it was 100 million, right? Which I think I worked out would be $140 million at this point. And I don't know, something strikes me as what Red Bull did being worse. But, you know, it's a difficult thing, and we're covering old ground going on about the cost cap and stuff like that. But I think it's a good point, Nick, that we do need to look at what happens with Red Bull. If they, look, I will say it, take the team out of it. Take the team out of it. So forget it's Red Bull that have been punished. As a Formula One fan, I will go ahead and say, if Red Bull, okay, take the team out. If any team is as dominant as that Bahrain performance for an entire season and the season after, so next year, after winning the Constructors' Championship and having the least amount of wind tunnel and suffering an extra sanction on that wind tunnel time, then it was nowhere near enough. No matter how efficient you are, it was nowhere near enough. And I'm not being anti-Red Bull. This is just me as a Formula One fan. It should, and the only time will tell on this, which is the difficult thing. We will only see at the end of this season and this time next year whether it was enough. Because for me, if a team like they carry on being this dominant and are this dominant into next season, it wasn't enough. And I'd like to know your opinions on that. And it could be any team, Ferrari, whoever. I'd want personally a real terms, you know, knocking down to, I don't know, where they're fighting for second place. Like, it'd be super difficult for them to win it and they're fighting in second place. You know, between second and third. Personally, that's what, and I think a lot of people were on that. I think a lot of people were on that. Like, I truly don't care that it was Red Bull. I'm not anti-Red Bull. There's a lot of good points about them, which I've said lots and lots and lots. But I think, you know, if it was Mercedes, I'd be the same. Ferrari, I'd be the same. That you need to see, if it's like football, if a player is red carded and gets suspended for 3 games, that's an immediate real terms punishment, isn't it? That team has to go without that for that. And while we can say about the Red Bull, the wind tunnel sanction, none of us, unfortunately, know how much it's going to hurt. You know? It's difficult to quantify, isn't it? I still think their car would be pretty damn good. Just how good? Yeah, this is the thing. It was very good last year. It's gotten even better into this season, but now is when their wind tunnel starts to hit more, doesn't it? But then again, we did see the beginnings of these regulations with the wind tunnels and stuff, and Mercedes was still winning. So, you know, but you just want a punishment to actually be a punishment, you know. Good point about taking the team out of it. I just think with the context of it being Red Bull, then after what we have seen in Bahrain, people are very quick to shout, what's the point? No, and I agree. I agree. And I know Red Bull fans will have a difference of opinion on this. Actually, I'll tell you what, is magnanimous? I can't say the word. But actually, when it was all kicking off, within my streams on my other channel, people were very, I can't say it, magnanimous. No, I can't say it. I think you might know what I'm trying to say. In saying, I'm a Red Bull fan, but we can't have this. And actually, I think Red Bull fans, they don't want to lose, but I think they would agree that for the good of Formula One, you've got to see that punishment has an effect. Because let's be real about it. I know what the word is, Gled. I know what the word is, but I can't say it. And I don't know why I can't say it. I don't know why I can't say it. I don't know why. I don't think I've ever tried to say it. But anyway. So if we magnanimous. Yes. Cheers. Thank you for that. I knew the word, I just couldn't get it out. I was like mag. But so here's another scenario. What if Red Bull do stay at the front substantially and dominantly this season and next with the punishment? To me, that really does send the message of why are we sticking to this cost cap? Don't know, Toto. Shall we? Don't matter, does it? Let's get the penalty. And look, or why, Fred? Why are we sticking to it? Well, we don't need to, do we? And look, I'm not saying Red Bull are doing anything wrong now, but again, if the punishment isn't, and it appears not to be harsh enough, the teams have got enough to pay the fine and do the extra over the cost cap. It's you know, I think most people would agree with me there. Like, if you know, well, no, you don't even have to get away with spending the money because they're not going to change your car. So it's almost, to me as well, the problem is, the more I'm thinking about this, say, well, this is the thing, maybe a points deduction, but there wasn't one. Now, this is the thing. They set a precedence with what they're doing with the punishments. So who's to say, let's say Aston Martin, they've got a billionaire owner. What if they go 20 million over the cost cap and we're 3/4 of the way through the season before we hear rumblings they've gone over the cost cap, but they're already 100 points in the lead of the championship? We didn't take anything away from Red Bull, so you can't do it to Aston Martin. I'm not saying, by the way, titles should have been taken away, but there was no, because that's done, and that's a done thing. That is in the pages of history. You can't, that shouldn't be changed. I've always been very, very consistent on that. It's done. But, you know, what would stop another team do it? If we see Red Bull be dominant this season and next, what's to stop another team just going, spend the money? They're not going to take the title off us. They're not going to take the points off us. And if they do, we've got a massive legal precedence. You know? You know, and this isn't a Red Bull thing. What is it? Is it devil's advocate? Is, you know, hypotheticals? That's all I'm talking here, because it seems like at this point there's been no effect. You know, you need to create another argument. You then create another argument if another team violates the cost cap and gets hit harder than what Red Bull. Well, yeah, exactly. That punishment to another team, what have had the desired impact? Just Red Bull are so far ahead before the punishment, probably. Late to the chat this morning, but I agree. I myself am a massive Red Bull Max fan, but I believe it should have been negative starter points. See, that was another stance, wasn't it? And I don't think that's the silliest of ideas. You know, I don't think that's the silliest of ideas. Look, I'm not in, just to be very, very clear, again, if anyone else is joining late, I'm not being anti-Red Bull at all. Not in any way. They've done an incredible job to be where they're at. I'm literally just posing a hypothetical that if Red Bull remains dominant this season and into next season with their sanction for going over the cost cap, here's a question for you. And I can't really word this for a poll, but you can answer yes or no. If you were the team boss of any other team, would you go over with the evidence of how Red Bull got Okay. If you were a team boss and the punishment that Red Bull got is there, we can all see it, and you have the ability to spend more money and get titles next season because you spent money over the cost cap, but at the end of next season you have to take that penalty, would you do it? I'm in. I mean, you know, we have the punishment there now, and if you know it's going to close the gap, we might see this create a situation. We might. Now, I suppose that comes down to the morals of what people perceive. Like, in an ideal world, you're going to go, no, I want to do this completely fairly. But now you can work on the assumption that Red Bull aren't, or whatever. You know what I mean? Well, they did it, and look at what they're doing. They're over it. They've paid the fine. And they won the title last year, and they look like they're probably going to win it this year. Is that worth the negative PR and that little blip? Honestly, yes, because in 15 years, look, we've seen we saw the McLaren $100 million fine, right? Ask any new Formula One fan about that now. They have no idea about it. And it'll be the same about the cost cap breach. In 10 years, people won't remember that Red Bull did that. So, but the history books will say Max Verstappen was champion and Red Bull were champion. And I'm scaring myself with the way I'm talking like this. You know, I'm not saying the should. I'm not saying anything bad about Red Bull. No, but the point is, Mortis, no one remembers it apart from people who were fans back then, but no one's bothered anymore, is my point. That's my point. No one's bothered anymore, but it will still show who were champions and when and whatnot, you know. But then, you see, McLaren's fine was for blatant cheating. In that sentence, to be honest, mate, there are plenty of people, whatever Red Bull say, there are plenty of people who will see what Red Bull did as blatant cheating. They spent more money than they were allowed to. And look, I'm like Switzerland in this, neutral really, with regards to Red Bull. But there are a lot of people who would term that as cheating, because they broke the rules and got punished for it. You know, some might say cheating, some might not. But Gled says the FIA cocked up big time, not giving a bigger punishment. As you say, precedent is set. So yes, spend the money. That 5 mil over the cost cap could bring them to 20 or 30 over the next few years because of the success and the notoriety of being champions and so on and so forth. You know, I like having these conversations, Love it when people get involved. I really love it when people get involved. But please do make sure you've hit like on the stream and also subscribe down below. Just a little reminder, I will be live for all of the sessions, doing my watch-alongs this weekend for all the free practices, qualifying and the race. So I do hope you'll join me. But that, actually, I've just realised I've been going nearly 34 minutes, is the end of TSK F1 this morning. I thank you so much for joining me, guys. Yeah, I will speak to you in the morning. Thanks a lot. See you later.